Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC. Kestra IS, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC. Kestra AS, an affiliate of Kestra IS. Capital Advisory Group, Inc. is not affiliated with Kestra IS or Kestra AS. Neither Kestra IS nor Kestra AS provide legal or tax advice and are not certified public accounting firms.
You work hard for your money. For the next hour, you're going to learn how to keep what's yours. Capital Advisory Group presents Keep What's Yours. Here are Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Hello and welcome to Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. My name is Josh Gilbert. I am sitting here with Jeff Zufall. He is the senior tax strategist and wealth advisor with Capital Advisory Group. Hello, Jeff.
Hello. How you doing?
Very good.
Good.
And it's another weekend. We're ready to roll. We're going to talk taxes. We're going to talk the housing market. We're going to talk interest rates. We're going to talk 401k. We're going to touch all the bases. But as always, I just want to mention what you can do for us and what you have done for me personally is that you can take a look at our finances, take a look at our taxes from last year or the year before. How many years of taxes do you want to see when I come in for the first visit?
Typically 2 years.
2 years taxes.
Kind of gives us a little. Sometimes we'll ask for more if we see stuff that changes, big changes. We'll ask for maybe 3 or 4 years, but typically 2 years.
You can take a look at our taxes, take a look at some paycheck stubs.
Yes.
Ask us a couple questions about what we look like financially on paper, and you can come up with a strategy. You can come up with a plan. You can come up with some ideas of how we can keep more of our money on our paychecks every 2 weeks in our accounts, not going to the federal government in the form of taxes. And we went to you and we got a tax return this past year. Heidi, I know, went to Jeff Zufall this year, and she got a tax return. Took a little bit longer.
Hers did, yes.
But she, I kept saying, "Hey, did you get your tax return yet?" Did you get your tax? And she goes, "Well, we got it." And it's like, it's so it works. And the way that you're able to do that is, at least for my situation, I know that you set up a flex spending account for us to use to pay for my son's schooling. We got $1,200 back on just that. Yeah. Or at least we kept $1,200.
Yes,
kept. And a couple of other things that you did, and some of the stuff I don't even get because it's numbers. It's hard numbers.
There's stuff that hides in a tax. Most people that we see when we start talking tax planning, their eyes roll back in their head. And they're just kind of like,
My eyes are starting to roll right now.
And everybody's like, oh, it's too complex. Don't worry about it. And it's like, no, it's not easy. I mean, to the degree of you just wave your wand and say, fix this one thing and you'll save $10,000. It does not happen. But typically what takes place is it's 4 to 5 to 6 items that you do within the tax year. And we still have time for that this year to help save money. Even to the degree if you go, hey, I'm single and all I have is a W-2, that's all you have. The concept is, do you have a 401k? Do you have access to an HSA? Those are the things that save you a ton of money, and most people overlook them. Again, I think we did the report on the 401k that I forget what the number percent was, that like 60% or 70% of the people that do a 401k don't even
have no idea
what it does, how it works.
Or what it does.
Exactly.
And I'm still kind of in the dark about it, but it's one of these things where, I'll just have it taken out of my paycheck and I'll worry about it later. But the idea is, you do have to worry about it later, but later's coming.
It's coming around the corner whether you realize it or not.
And we're going to talk about doing Roth conversions this time of year is when you start looking at your finances, because you kind of know, there's 2 months left.
Yeah, within reason, you could project. Yes, some people might get a bonus at the year end.
But you kind of know what you know
where you're at
this year or what you're going to make this year.
Yes.
So the question is, can I do a Roth conversion that would be financially beneficial to me tax-wise? And if it is, then do it.
Yeah.
And this is the time of year
tons
to do
of time to do it.
And you were telling me off the air that from the ones that you have done this year, you did run into a couple that mathematically were not a good idea.
Just wasn't in their best interest to do it. Their income's too high. The math didn't work. Because most people will, when they do a Roth conversion calculation, they're like, oh, I got X in this Roth, and that's after tax, and it's going to, or you don't take the tax from the Roth, basically. And that's where the issue comes into play, because you have to look at it from a net tax. So if it cost you, you got $10,000 in there, it cost you $1,000 to do the conversion, you got to do it with $9,000 and project it off into the future and say, how long does it take me to make back that tax that I paid? And in some cases, if the tax brackets are too high, it takes forever, and it's not worth it. You might as well leave it where it's at, because you're not going to take it out lump sum. You're going to take it out in income as you go forward over time. So we had one person that kept saying, I'm going to convert. It was like $1.5 million in an IRA to a Roth. And it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
The math on it was crazy. And mathematically, it sounded correctly when we would discuss it. But we did the math on it. No way in the world. I mean, it was totally against him when we did it. Yeah. So, yes, he'd never have to pay tax on it ever again. But there was a huge tax bill that was due. I mean, huge. So,
and that's the thing, and this is the game, and this is the best way that I can understand. I don't understand 401ks like you do, Jeff, but I think I understand it more than the 65% who have no idea how it works. The idea is you sock it away tax-free now and say, I'll pay the taxes later.
Yes.
And then hopefully when later comes, my tax rate is lower than it is today.
That's the concept.
When I moved it.
Yeah, that's the concept.
If I'm at an effective 24% tax rate now,
exactly.
Hopefully when I take this money out, I'll be at 20%.
Exactly.
And I saved 4% of my money.
Exactly.
And when you're talking about, $500,000, $1 million.
Time value of money, I mean, over a 20-year, 25, 30-year span.
Compound interest is a beautiful thing.
Exactly.
That's a huge cost savings.
Yeah.
And even today, that is something separate that you and I talk about because, that is something that we will deal with, and maybe I'll be dealing with one of your kids by the time I get to be
third generation is in.
When I'm 60-something years old, you'll either be retired or
Nah, probably never retire, but not work as much as I do now.
Not working in the office as much as you do now. And by the way, when I get to be 60, people will be living to be 120.
Yeah, 120. Yeah. That's
Jeff will be, 90's the new 60.
Yeah. Well, I went to a business coach, and they did say, write your age down on a piece of paper. And everybody in the room wrote their age down. And then they said, plus, and it's a stupid experiment, but it makes you go, whoa. And they said, +5, +10, +15, +20. And you start adding your age up. All of a sudden, you're like, whoa. And the theory is it's Dan Sullivan's strategic coach, to get you to realize, hey, you have more time to, do your business building. But I looked at the numbers, and I was like, wait a minute.
Ooh, I'm old.
I got grandkids that'll be 30. I'm like, I don't think I'll be here. But
yeah. So, but the idea is I sock money away now, and I'll worry about the taxes later.
Yes.
But hopefully the taxes are lower than they are today. And
again, by bracket-wise, most people, and again, what we're faced with, 2024's election year. Whether everybody out there listening realizes, and this is not a political statement by no means, Trump's tax laws, his tax laws he put in play in 2018, 2019, all sunset 2025. The issue of the day is whoever wins the election is not forced. I mean, I shouldn't say by choice or not. It's not, we're going to change tax law. They are forced to change tax law. So hypothetically, you go, hey, over time, tax laws are going to go up, or taxes are going to go up. I get that completely. But again, the concept is tax deferral, pre-tax contribution of your money, tax deferral or time value of money, a dollar today, what can it earn over the next 20, 25 years without paying any tax on it? Hypothetically, if you run the numbers, it looks great, but that's what we're contending with today is what's 2026 tax law look like, and not many people know.
And the tax code does change, and for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. There's beneficial stuff in there that we talk about all the time that wasn't in there maybe 5-10 years ago. So the tax code does change for better or for worse. It doesn't always just go up.
No, not necessarily. I mean, technically it goes up, but then there's a caveat to the side that you get to take a deduction.
They always carve something out for us, and not as much as they do for the billionaires.
No.
They'll always throw something in there for us, and in the hopes that maybe we vote them back in office.
Exactly.
Again. But the idea is that when I do sock that money away, it's not like, I'll revisit it in 30 years. It's not set it and forget it.
No.
It is, let's revisit it in 6 months.
6 months.
And maybe the conversation is, we're all good.
Yeah. And in the past it was. I mean, there was years where that money was on autopilot. You looked at it and you went, it's good. Don't touch it. And then in the last 6-9 months, we've had some turmoil kick in. There could be even more coming forward. In election year, typically market volatility kicks in for no reason other than so-and-so says this, and the market goes up 2,000 points, and so-and-so says that, and the market goes down 2,000, 3,000 points. That's market volatility is part of the game. As long as your time horizon for when you need the money is, say, 5 years down the road, you're okay. But if your time horizon is 12 months from now, don't put money in the market.
Yeah.
Sit in cash. And today you're paid to sit in cash versus a year ago or a year and a half ago, you were wasting time putting it in cash because you didn't make anything.
Yeah.
So
because of the interest.
Exactly. So the good effect of a rising interest rate over time is now you are paid. I mean, money markets are shy of 5% just to sit, no risk. Totally liquid, and you get 5% over 12 months. Doesn't beat inflation by no means, but you're still making something. So
that is the idea. You have to have a plan.
Yes.
And it's not something that, every time I get a paycheck, I should look at it just to make sure that things are on the up and up.
Exactly.
No weird surprises.
Exactly. We've had people who did their W-4s, thought they did them correctly. They didn't, or they might have filled it out wrong. Somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do in payroll. They had no federal withholding on their paycheck stub. For 6 months, and they didn't look at their paycheck stub. They never paid attention to it. You would think that you got a perk in your bank account, so you go, hey, something's going on here. Nobody did, and then tax time.
Bank error in your favor.
Yeah,
like $50
doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But at tax time, all of a sudden they owe $9,000 in tax, and they're like, "Well, you goofed up my return." It's like, no, you didn't have enough withheld.
You goofed up your withholdings, and that's
exactly.
One of the sports guys here at the station said, "Hey, Josh, can you hook me up with Jeff Zufall? I keep paying every year in taxes." And I told you that, and the first thing you said was he's probably not having enough withheld every paycheck.
Unfortunately, tax that you pay is a reality. You've got to pay some tax.
Hey, taxes are real, people.
You have to.
There's not a lot of choice in this.
You're not going to get out of it. I mean, you could reduce it strategically. And in some cases, I mean, this sounds counterintuitive to what we do. But in some cases, you want to have, like business owners are like, I don't ever want to report profit and pay tax. Well, if you don't, you're not paying into the system. And when I say the system, you're not paying into Social Security and you're not paying into Medicare. So long term, you're hurting yourself because you won't get as high of or big of a benefit back from the feds. And then I get the counter response of, well, Social Security won't be here when I retire. I can't say it will or won't. I would say it probably will, or some variation of it will be there.
Yeah.
So
they're not just going to leave us high and dry.
They're not just because also that's their slush fund too. So
Right.
There's more IOUs tossed in the Social Security account than you've ever dreamed of. So,
well, that another conversation for another day. But we had a great chat last time about Medicare.
Yes, exactly.
And how all that works. And actually, you know what? It's a lot easier than I even realized.
It is. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have someone that's knowledgeable explain it to you, you go, oh, I get it.
There's a lot of options, but if you go through them systematically one by one, A,
exactly.
B, C, D, it gets pretty easy. So I was pretty surprised about that. All right. Now, the idea is to sock some money away, and hopefully when it comes time to pull it out, you're at a lower tax rate. You played the game, you won.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
Exactly.
How you got there, though, that's where Jeff comes in, and you can give him a call, 636-394-5524. Have them sit down with your stuff. It's not just a retirement thing. It's an every year.
Exactly.
Don't you pay taxes every year?
Every year. Yep.
Yes. Do you want to pay lower taxes every year? Yes. So it's an every year thing. So he can set you up for 30 years down the road, and he can also make sure that every April 15th you're paying lower and lower amounts going out to the federal government. That's the name of the game. Keep more of what's yours. Let's go to a commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll open up the newspaper. A couple of things in the news this week. The interest rates, funding the IRS has come back up again for some reason. So we'll talk about what's in the news on Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. I'm Josh Gilbert. That's Jeff Zufall. CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com is the website, Capital Advisory Group. And you can call Jeff, 636-394-5522.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back on the show, back to Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. I'm Josh Gilbert. And opening up the newspaper this week, we saw a couple things. Interest rates. Let's go there second. I want to do interest rates second because right now we've got a new Speaker of the House. Yes. And when we do this show, we try not to do politics.
Politics, yeah.
Because it's not worth it, but we do have to talk about it because it does seem like sometimes there are sides of the aisle that are for taxes and sides of the aisle that are against them.
Exactly.
And wherever you fall, that's just where you fall. But funding the IRS seems to be an issue. We have talked about how the IRS needs more money. They are in the dark ages.
Desperately. Computer systems need to be upgraded. Hiring of people. For a while, it was like a net zero, which means they were replacing the people that retired, who are finally said, I'm done, get me out of here, and they quit. They were just basically net zeroing out employee-wise. So really, we were gaining no ground. COVID shut them down terribly bad. I guess in their defense, the problem is to get stuff fixed. And again, people who have ran into this, where you get a letter from the IRS, it took years. Literally years to get it fixed. So they didn't have the manpower to answer the phone. If you did get a hold of somebody, they said, I can't help you, call somebody else, literally, and hung up on you. Mm-hmm. And you'd have to repeat that process all over if somebody even answered the phone. So the feds gave them $80 billion beginning of this year.
As part of the
inflation, the IRA. It's not an IRA like you think. Oh. It's the Inflation Reduction Act. They got $80 billion. They gave back $20 billion for the debt ceiling debate, which was negotiated out, and somehow that became part of the package. So we're down to $60 billion for funding for the IRS. And the IRS has built their plans. They've shown it to the U.S. Treasury as to, hey, here's how we're going to spend this money. Might not be the most efficient, but at least they're showing, hey, we're hiring people. You can actually get somebody on the phone now. We can get stuff resolved a lot faster. And now apparently this aid package that they're playing with, I think going to Israel, is like $14.3 billion. Now they're saying that if they give that $14.3 billion to Israel, then they're going to deduct it from the $60 billion that the IRS has sitting on file.
So it seems like we've got a new Speaker of the House. I forget his name, Mike something, whatever. But they came up with a plan to fund military aid to Israel. If Ukraine, they want to fund money to Ukraine, great. Here's our plan of doing that. We take it from the IRS. Yeah. And it seems like the Republicans don't want to fund the IRS.
So yes. and his name is Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson, yes.
I can't remember his name either. So you say, yeah, it seems that way. And again, not speaking for them or against them, is it the fact that they know they have that cash outlay out there already, so they're just going to go steal it away from the IRS, and hopefully from a Republican standpoint, the people are like, yay, they took that away, IRS can't come get me, because the IRS is ramped up, and I say ramped up from a standpoint they're a little ahead of the game. So people who have cheated on their tax returns might need to be worried. Seriously, especially if you're a small business owner. Whether this is rhetoric that's put out in the open media, in a sense, saying they're ready and they're coming. They've started their audits on large hedge funds, partnerships, where they come in and say, you owe us money. Whether they even see your return, they automatically assume that. So once they get done with those guys, you know that the mass majority will be self-employed people that they come after. It's easy pickings.
So the idea is that the IRS got extra money to hire people to answer the phones for once, finally.
Yeah.
But also to hire agents to go out.
They're revenue agents is what they are. They're
to
the
audit
ones.
people.
Yeah, they carry a gun. They get a badge. For the nature of the beast that they do, they probably shouldn't be armed with a bodyguard.
They're coming
because they're showing up
places
saying,
and saying,
"You owe us money."
You've been cheating on your taxes
Yes.
for 3 years. You owe us
Yeah.
money.
Anybody normal is going to say, "Here's my tax return. What do you want to see?" And go down that path. But anybody that has been cheating might be a little offensive.
Get off
by
my
that.
property.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, well, no, we're here because
Exactly. So, but now they're starting to steal that money back away from them. Now, is it the fact that they don't want them to come out and audit people? I mean, no, nobody wants to get audited, but it's all part of the game. I believe that the audit last year was less than 2% of all taxpayers. I shouldn't say taxpayers, tax filers. Less than 2%, and that number is way down from where it was. I think back in the day, it might have been as high as 15%, but they don't have the manpower. So if there's another, I think that which is coming in maybe December, another debt ceiling debate that we have to run through. They're going to go, hey, take it from the IRS again at $20 billion. Now they're down to $40 billion.
Yeah. So they keep clawing the money back, but. What did you tell me, was it last week, 2 weeks ago? Didn't you tell me that there's a number that the IRS has come up with and said, this is how much money we were unable to collect in taxes?
$688 billion.
And that's just 1 year?
That's 1 year, they're saying.
That they haven't collected
Yes.
because people are filling out their forms wrong on accident?
Failure to file, failure to pay, cheating. And I say cheating, just you're not going to file a return because you don't like what the numbers look like.
Mm-hmm. So $680 billion, and the IRS says we want more agents because we want to go and collect that money.
Exactly. That's what they're saying. So, again, the IRS is saying, hey, there's $688 billion out there, 688, I believe. Their budget was they got $80 billion from the feds. So you go somewhere in there. There's got to be a mathematical equation to say yes. If you let them loose, not that you want to let them loose, just go attack people and get more money. I mean, they have to prove it. So again, that's why we say document, document, document.
Yeah.
Keep every record receipt you've ever touched, someplace easily accessible. Not in the proverbial shoebox thrown in a closet, at your house. Make it digital. So if you ever got to go back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you can prove this stuff.
And I have a tax guy. It's you. So I know that I'm pretty good. I don't need to really worry.
No, let's rephrase that. Your wife is very good.
Yeah, my wife is good. I still need a lot of help. But I kind of sit here and say, well, the people that are cheating on their taxes, I kind of want them to get caught.
Yeah, but no. If it's blatant and there's ways that the IRS has, they won't tell us what they're looking at when returns come in. We see stuff that comes in and people are like, oh, yeah, I said I had crypto, but no, I don't. Don't say anything. And it's like, you just told us you did. I got to report something.
Right.
So that's what you run into that every once in a while. And there's people that we've turned away. We're like, nah, I don't like any of your numbers. I just don't trust my license to what I see.
Right. You're not going to help someone cheat on their taxes.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Because I've got to do, whether anybody realizes this, your preparer, whoever's doing your return, has to answer, I believe it's 12 questions, 14 questions. And they're yes or no's. You don't have to give detail. But it asks questions like, hey, was there anything that the client brought in that was suspicious looking? Could they produce documentation to you? If you ask for stuff, did they give it to you? Did they verbally call you on the phone and go, oh, yeah, my number is X, And then it's like a due diligence checklist that you have to check yes or no when you file a return. And there is a preparer I don't know what you want to call it, negligence fine if they catch stuff on there that.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize you filled that out for me.
Everybody.
And when it said, does Josh Gilbert look pretty shady? You said, oh,
yes,
scale of 1
yes,
to 10.
and then I gave a detail of, hey.
6, He's got one of those curly mustaches.
Yeah.
He laughed a lot,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
so
I didn't realize that you guys had to fill that out on all
exactly
of us.
on every return you do.
Yeah.
And that kind of keeps everybody honest, because if there's ever an issue, IRS can come back and say, hey, you did that. And I don't know what the fine is, maybe $500, $1,000, could be higher. They'll have a fine for everything. But that's what you're up against. So, again, if you see stuff that's shaky, if you're doing it yourself, it's a non-paid preparer, so that's on you. But if there's a preparer helping you do that, that's a huge issue.
And they gotta walk the line.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing. It's like, I don't like paying taxes.
No, nobody does.
I know that you kind of have to. So at the end of the day, I'm going to pay what I legally have to.
Exactly.
But not a penny more.
Not a penny more.
So I'm not going to write a check with a smile on my face. I'm going to write a check saying this is what I have
There's
to
a
pay.
little cussing going on while you're writing that check or paying it online.
Sure.
Before you click the button, you're like, brr.
But the smile comes in saying, when I got Jeff on the case, we actually were able to keep more money
Exactly.
in our pocket. So, did I get one over on the government? I don't know, maybe.
It's not one over. It's what is legally open to you, as long as you stay, again, the guardrail scenario, as long as you stay within the guardrails, you're perfectly fine.
So when I submit a tax form, I e-file, and it hits the IRS, do they look at it and go, well, he didn't take advantage of the 529. We got him.
No, nobody's going to. They're like, are the numbers correct? Does the W-2 income, 1099 income match what's on the return? That's what they're looking at.
They're not. I'm a number to them.
They're not digging deep into it.
But
other than to match, the one thing that we're seeing is maybe, I don't know what the number is. We're seeing more and more of these guys that are showing up, and it's validation of identity. It seems like there's dozens of them that have come in. But it can't be a ton of people. But if they sense something, maybe a deceased spouse, maybe you're signing for a deceased relative, it just seems like all of a sudden they're all over this, where you have to call the number, physically talk to them, give them your W-2 information, give them your refund, so on and so forth, tax return, and they'll point you to a line on the tax return, and you have to tell them what that number is. So it's almost like they're double checking fraud.
Oh, I see.
And it's how do you say it? It's very inconvenient for the client, because I'm like, hey, you got to do it. I can't touch it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I can't call them for you, but I can give you all the data that you need that they're going to ask you.
It's like back in the day, we used to get these video games on our computers, and to make sure that we weren't just sharing them and making copies, and they go to page 3 of the manual, and say, what is the fourth word on,
and,
oh my gosh,
type it in just to make sure. Yep.
So then we just started making copies of the manual. But it's just one of those things where I don't like paying taxes.
Yeah.
You don't like paying. Nobody likes paying them, but we got to. And I got to imagine, when the taxes come over, I submit this to the IRS. It should scan it and say, well, they should have taken advantage of the FSA. And then, and then another one comes over and they should have taken advantage of a Roth Conversion.
Nope.
But it doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't do that. All it does is, like I said, make sure that the income is reported on the return correctly. No mathematical errors. Maybe stuff in the wrong category. I've seen that, where it'll kick it back for weird stuff. But typically at the end of the day, and anybody that's ever gotten this letter, it will say, hey, on your return you reported this, but other people reported this to us. And it's if you're missing a W-2, missing a 1099, brokerage accounts.
Right.
A lot of the
W-2s go to you and to the government.
Exactly.
1099s go to you and
the government. So they have a record, which is kind of on your honor. So they have a record of all this stuff sitting out there. They send you a copy of it, and then at the end of the year, they're matching it up by your Social Security number. So
So if there's a copy floating around that you didn't provide
K1s,
a duplicate of,
K1s, 1099s, our culprits 95% of the time are 1099s that were overlooked. And I say overlooked from a standpoint that maybe you have your account at TD Ameritrade, maybe it's digital, and they send you an email every once in a while and say, hey, your statement's out here, come look at it. You're never going to do that. You're going to look at your account, watch your account. But the tax documents were digital, and they just never printed it and sent it over. So again, the letter shows up. As long as you don't underreport your income by 25%, yes, you will pay penalties and interest for that tax that you owe going forward. But if it's greater than 25%, you have an unreported income issue, and they'll slap a huge fine on you for that.
Yeah.
I mean, huge. So.
Yep. And then in the news as well, the interest rates. Have we gone up, down, or are we staying flat?
Staying flat. Held them. This is the second meeting in a row that they did nothing. So the market is liking it. Market's kind of taken off and got a little rebound going, figuring, again, it's that concept of if the Fed ever comes out and says we are pausing, and they say that in their verbiage, the market takes off and goes crazy because everybody's like, hey, they're not going to raise rates on us. We now can go invest and do our thing. The big problem, though, is they really didn't say they're pausing. They just said they're not raising rates.
Right.
And, I mean, I say this jokingly. They want to see what their damage is that they've done so far, and it takes time for it to come to fruition. And, again, you get into the end of this year, they may not raise rates. We get into 24, that's an election year. So you don't, I mean, most people are like, oh, they're going to decrease interest rates the first quarter of 24. Economists don't see that right now. They're seeing be accustomed to higher interest rates and higher inflation, and literally their response is for a while. Now, whether they want to get past the 24 election, and then that's when they get aggressive again on raising rates, whatever. I think they're afraid if they raise rates too far, too fast, they literally choke off our economy. And they don't want that. They're just trying to get inflation under control. But again, not saying this is different this time. If you go back to the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, Fed chief was Paul Volcker. They said, we're pausing, literally came out and said, we're pausing. Everything's great. We have this under control. And then 6 months later, they were like, oops, inflation raised its head again. We got to get it under control. And then that's where you saw interest rates at 14, 18%. Hopefully we don't go down that path. Again, you hear anybody over probably 45 or 50 is like, hey, I paid a 12% interest rate. You know, I get that. The problem is this is the house that you paid that 12% interest rate on might have been $60,000. Today, the minimum, you're probably in the $375, $450 range.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're talking thousands a month in interest differential.
If the interest rates go too high, will home prices come down?
Well, that's what they're saying. That if it goes really crazy, that home prices will come down for the reality of offsetting what that difference is so that people could buy.
I can't afford a $375 house with a 12% interest rate.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, you're paying $4,000 a month in interest. It's just not.
Nobody's going to buy that house.
And the housing market just literally comes to a screeching halt. Now, again, you say, could they hold their value? I mean, St. Louis County, still the issue is there's no inventory. So houses are still moving. But you got to pay. And I've heard this.
Got to live somewhere.
Well, you do, but I've heard this from a lot of people is, I'm going to buy the house, I'll pay the higher interest rate, and then in the next year or so, interest rates are going to come down. But the Fed's not saying that. So if you were planning on that, be prepared for higher interest rates for a longer period of time. How long, I don't know. I mean, I don't think the economists know either until we play this off for a while.
Just be prepared for the next year or so that you might not be able to refinance just yet.
Exactly.
So the interest rate stays flat, and then with the election year next year, a lot of the economists are saying they don't like to move the interest rates up or down.
Up or down.
They don't want to help the incumbent. They don't want to
hurt them by raising rates on them as they come into the year.
They don't want to be
every
part of the political process.
Exactly. Every administration always says, we don't do that. But both sides of the aisle have done it. They go tap the strategic oil reserves. They try to reduce oil prices to make it less painful as you go through an election year.
Price of the pump went down. Yeah, because they tapped the reserves.
Exactly. So, I mean, they'll play little games like that, both sides. Not like one does it more than the other. They both do it just to make sure that they get elected.
But as far as the Fed's concerned, they're like, we're not going to have any.
Now, if their hands played and they have to raise rates for data that they see, I mean, again, the Federal Reserve states all the time that they are data dependent, which means they watch the data that comes in, and that's how they make their decisions. So if the data shows you got to raise rates, I think unfortunately they may have to. The current administration won't like them for that. But the flip is true too, is if they go, oh, the economy's coming to a screeching halt, we have to lower interest rates to spark something, that's a perk to who's ever in the administration at the current time. So they'll try their best to kind of wing through it. Now, November 6th, 7th, whatever the date is, boom, they can do whatever they want to do. Doesn't matter. The vote's done. They can take off and raise rates, lower rates to kind of do what they need to do. So.
All right. Well, that is the newspaper. Let's close the newspaper now.
Okay.
And then save it in a pile because we're going to have a bonfire later.
Yes.
It is that time of year.
It is.
So we'll revisit the news next week, but we'll go to commercial break and come back. It's that time of year. I don't know if the Christmas music has started on those radio stations.
Haven't heard it yet, but I don't want to hear it.
I've seen the commercials.
Yeah.
They're on. The commercials are on TV.
There's a couple of them already that are out.
But it's that time of year. Should I do the Roth conversion? And we'll get into all of that in the next commercial or in the next break. We'll hit a commercial now, but when we come back, more of Keep What's Yours. This is the time of year to look at your stuff and say, is it right to do a Roth conversion? We'll be back. Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. Give him a call, 636-394-5524. He's my tax guy. He can be your tax guy, too. Capital Advisory Group, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back on the Big 550, back to Keep What's Yours, and it is that time of year, time to look at our Roth conversions. Ho, ho, ho. Yeah. There should be like a Santa Roth.
Claus.
Santa Roth. It's
trademark that.
We should. I'm Santa Roth. Should you do a Roth conversion? Well, the only way you really know if it's going to be mathematically, financially beneficial to you is if you know what you have made this year.
Exactly.
And this is the time of year where you can see the past 10 months, what did you make? You can look ahead and say, what am I going to make?
Yeah.
And you can make a pretty good estimation.
Very good estimation as to what it's going to cost you.
Your yearly take home.
Yeah.
So you can make a Roth conversion and not be at risk of jumping into a higher tax bracket.
Exactly. And the reason we say do it at the end of the year, in the past, and I say 3 years ago, there was a do-over provision in a Roth, which meant if you converted your Roth in April and then the market went down and it was at a lower value, you'd go, hey, I want to do this do-over, and you got to do that. You got one time a year to do it. And then the IRS took that away. So now there's no do-over. So the concept is you'd wait till the end of the year. I say towards the end of the year. You know exactly what your income's going to be, and then you can tax bracket plan for one, and you could tax plan the other.
Yeah.
So if you added $20,000 to your income.
Well, let's do this. Let's take some real numbers here. So where does the tax bracket shift? Just one of them.
Well, married filing jointly, you're going from, I think, 135. You're jumping from a 20 to 24, and that's, it's a 4% increase.
At 135.
Yeah. So,
right. So let's do that. Say I'm married filing jointly, and it's November, the first weekend of November, and we say, you know what, by the end we made this much so far. By the end of the year, I think we're going to be hitting right at about 120.
Exactly.
So we can say, well, we've got buffer there of about $15,000 before we push ourselves into a new tax bracket.
Exactly.
We can convert about $10,000 or $12,000.
Exactly.
Add it. So when I do a Roth conversion, what I'm literally doing is taking money from the non-taxed
Well, you're taking it from pre-tax dollars that have taxes have never been paid on it.
Never been paid.
You're converting it to a Roth that you will never pay tax on ever again. And the question is, how much can you do? Because it will create taxation. It's going to boost your taxable income.
So when I do a traditional 401k, I'm putting money in before tax, and then when I go to take it out 30 years down the road, then I'll pay taxes on it then.
Exactly.
And the idea is that I will take it out at a tax rate lower than when it would have gone in.
Hypothetically.
Again,
and you won't take it in lump sum. I mean, nobody comes in and says, hey, I got $1 million in my 401k, send it to me now.
Because that counts as your income.
Exactly. So you'd say, I got $1 million in this account. I can use what's called the 4% rule. 4% rule is there's tons of white papers out there that says as long as you don't extract more than 4% out of your account, you might be okay through the markets, ups and downs, and it'll hold your principal somewhat the same. You might see your account balance drop in a bad market, but you also see it go up in a good market. So the concept behind that is 4%-ish as you go forward. If you take that out, that's taxable income to you. So you wouldn't go, hey, I want $1 million, send it to me now, and pay all the tax in 1 year. It'd be crazy.
That would be insane.
Yes.
That would be the dumbest thing you could ever possibly do. But as far as a Roth goes, me and my wife make $125 a year, say. $135 is the cutoff. We can take out almost $10,000.
Exactly.
Add it to our
income,
convert it to Roth, pay the taxes on it without hitting a new tax bracket.
Exactly.
And that way we're good.
Yeah.
And now it's in a Roth, and it can
hypothetically
grow.
you never, as long as you follow the rules, which is 5 years or 59.5, whichever is longer. You can always take your principal out of the Roth. Whatever you put in, you could take back out because it's now after-tax money.
Yep.
It's just the earnings have to stay there as you go forward.
I've paid the taxes on it. It's now in a Roth. It can grow and grow and grow. Hopefully like wildfire.
Yeah.
It's just growing and growing.
Need market participation to
Sure.
push that along too.
But if I follow the rules of 5.5 or
59.5 or 5 years,
or 5
whatever's
years,
longer,
I can have that money and never pay taxes on the earnings.
Yes.
Otherwise, if it was in my E-Trade account or a brokerage account, it would grow.
But you'd pay taxes on it each year.
I'd pay taxes on the gains.
Yes. Any gains? You'd have to sell it to get capital gains, realized or unrealized, or long term or short term. And then any dividends that are generated, you pay tax on that every year. Any interest that's generated, you pay tax on it every year.
But if it's living in the Roth,
never. I mean, there's nothing out there.
So that's the benefit of the Roth. But the idea is to do Roth conversions, take money out of your pre-tax and put it in the Roth. You have to do it strategically,
yes,
so that you don't jump yourself accidentally into a new tax bracket.
And again, tax brackets are progressive. So it doesn't mean that if you step over into a new tax bracket that you go from a 20 to a 24. You don't pay 24% on all dollars.
Of it. So I'm at 135, and then I take out an extra $1,000. I'm at 136.
Exactly.
I'm still paying 20% on 135.
Exactly.
But the extra $1,000,
you
now
pay
I'm paying
that
24%.
higher tax bracket. Exactly.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So the game is, and again, you get in all kinds of weird stuff. The big one is going back to Medicare to say if you did a Roth conversion when you're 65 or 67, the concept would be is what does it cost you? And if it's going to cost you higher Medicare premiums because you increased your taxable income, you go, ooh, could we justify it? Because you got to take the higher Medicare premiums like what we talked about last week and throw that into the taxes that you're also paying and say, this is my true cost at the end of the day, and is it worth it? And in some cases, it's not.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that you just have to have a plan.
Yes.
And you have to have someone there who can do the math.
And math always wins. That's the end of the story.
And, like I said, every week, I'm bad at math. So I need someone there who, number one, knows the rules. Number two, knows kind of the avenues to go down.
Yeah.
Knows the tax code.
Yeah.
I didn't know that the flex spending account, the FSA that we use for my son's daycare, I didn't know that even existed.
Yeah.
and then you need someone who knows how to do the math.
Yeah.
So we came into you. You did the math for us. You told us about the FSA. You helped us get started with that. Not only can Jeff tell you that these things exist, he can actually set them up and tell you how to use them.
Yeah.
He can get on the phone with your HR company. But before we go, while we're still talking about Roth conversions, tell me about the couple that came in, you did the math, and it didn't work out for them.
Did not mathematically work out for them because they were on Medicare. So the trick is you got to take they were 66, 67. They were already on Medicare. You did a Roth conversion. It pushed them into a higher tax bracket. So not only did they have the extra tax, and then you have to take the math. You have to take the tax from the Roth. Most people will pay the tax from another source. So you do a $20,000 Roth conversion. You're not taking a couple $1,000 from the Roth to make it $18,000, and then that $18,000 has to make back the tax and go positive again. Is the math. Most people will pay it from an outside source. And so, yeah, it looks great on paper. You go, oh, that's the greatest thing in the world, convert to a Roth. But what you're forgetting is what's your higher Medicare premium? So if it $1 over those thresholds or whatever the brackets are for Medicare forces you into a higher premium, not only for Part B, but also for any supplements that are out there.
Right. So instead of paying $170 a month,
you could be paying, I think it's $262 is the next jump. And so there's $100 a month, $1,200 a year. How long, and it's going to take you a year plus to get it back down as long as you don't do it again the following year.
it just doesn't work out mathematically.
Mathematically doesn't work.
Is that something that if they came to you in March, you could have?
I can, but I don't
prepared
know
for that.
I don't know where they're going to be from an income level for the year,
or maybe even in January.
Yeah.
If someone comes back, you can say, now let's start the year like this.
Exactly, and this is what we're going to do to prepare for this by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, and that's the one big one, because again, it's the year in which you converted is the year you pay tax. So even if they came in January and said, here's all my numbers, it's past December 31st, you're converting January for 2024, not 23.
Yep.
So that's the issue is November, December are the times where you should be doing that. And in the past, that never was that because you always had the redo option to go, oops, I didn't like that. Market dropped by the end of the year. You could do the redo, do it at a lower amount, save you some money, but you can't do it anymore.
They took that away.
Yeah, IRS figured out that a lot of people were using it to their advantage with crazy markets.
And that's the thing. You have to figure out what's still in play. If you're still talking about the oops provision, that's not there anymore. If you're still talking about what's the one that they took away with the Secure Act, the 10 years, you got to...
Oh, yeah, for beneficial IRA, where you could inherit an IRA and you just use it for your retirement.
Yeah.
So if your retirement was 30 years in the future, 30 years in the future is what you look at. Now it's 10 years.
Now it's 10 years.
So you got 10 years in which to do something with the IRA. If it's $30,000, $40,000, stretch it over 2 years, you're fine. But if it's $1 million IRA, you got issues.
You got to liquidate it in 10 years.
10 years.
How are you going to do that?
Exactly.
These are things that you have to take into account, especially when they get on the books that weren't there, maybe 5 years ago when you made your last plan with your planner. So talking to Jeff on a yearly basis, at least when he does your taxes, is what you want to do. But you want to chat with him probably twice a year, if not a little bit more. And that could be via phone call, 636-394-5524. Give Jeff a call. Tell him that you heard the show and you want to come in and get the ball rolling. Number one, do my taxes. That's the number one thing, because I don't want to do those at all. I'll let someone else do them for you. That's Jeff. And then while you're in there, say, and then this is my retirement plan.
Yeah.
And this is me on paper. This is what we have in savings already. Can we keep more of what's ours on a yearly basis? Can we keep more of what's ours when it comes to retirement over the next 30 years? Jeff can help you out with that. Capital Advisory Group, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. That's Jeff Zufall. 636-394-5524. Your RMDs are coming.
Oh, yeah.
How you take them out, that's up to you. So have somebody on your side who knows the math and knows the law. That's Jeff Zufall. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
You betcha.
You've been listening to Keep What's Yours with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Manager at Capital Advisory Group. To learn more, call 636-394-5524 or visit CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com.